Welcome. In this video I'm just going to show you how to add an IP camera to the Freedom VMS Server Recorder. Now in this example I'm going to add an Amiga IP camera, but other devices are very similar. Now there's a few things we need to do before we can add an IP camera, and that is we need at least one spare license for the camera, of course, and we also need to make sure that we have calculated the impact on retention. So how many days storage you will get with this, with the existing hard drives, you'll get with this adding these cameras. So first off, I'll check how many licenses I have free on this server. To do that, I click on the setup icon down here, and then I click on device setup, and down here we see available license. In my case it's 27, so I do have some spare licenses. Now if I didn't have a spare license, I'd obviously have to obtain a license per camera, and to do that from the live view I can click on or double click on the logo up here, and you need to copy this serial number you see here, and you need to provide that to your CCTV provider to obtain another license, or however many you need. And then you'll be provided with what's called a TST file, and I'll quickly show you how to upgrade the license. So I'm going to close the Freedom server, so we have to first close down and exit the software, and then this is the file in question. So notice it has the TST extension, so we need to copy this file here that I've been provided by my CCTV provider. Copy that, and I'm on Windows 1064 here, so the default folder, installation folder for Freedom Server is under C Program Files Freedom, then Freedom Server 3.5 in this case. Then I just copy it in this area here, and yes, and you see it there, and then I simply restart Freedom. So I'll restart the Freedom software, and after it's started you can actually click up here and you should see extra licenses listed here. It should tell you how many licenses you've got. I've just used the same file, so mine hasn't changed, but it will show you when it's incremented the licenses available now. So that's how you upgrade license on a Freedom server. Okay, so let's get to it. So I'm going to add the camera now. Before we continue, there's a few things I have done. I have pre-configured the IP camera, so it has an IP address that is unique on the network, and it is within the range that the recorder is on. Now there is a separate video on how to configure IP cameras, so I won't go into detail here about that, but basically, of course, I've given the camera an IP address, I've enabled motion detection on the camera, and set the appropriate date, time and GMT offset values for my region, and also configured the camera exposure settings to minimize motion blur. So I'm going to add the camera now, so I'm going to click on setup and device setup, and I'm going to click on the plus to manually add. Now first we're going to give it a name. We recommend prefixing it with a camera number, but in this example I'm just going to let's say it's camera 99, and I'm going to call it new camera so you can easily identify it. Video. Now the device type, it's an Amiga, so I'll select Amiga from there, and under private IP I input its IP address and the username and password. I'll click apply, and once I do that it should appear in the list on the left here, usually down the bottom, and that's what we want to see. Okay, and you see the camera is listed here, and these are the connection details. If I click on the second, this is the overlay name, so the camera name. So it's important to understand with Freedom you've got the device name which appears in the list, which in this case is C99, and this is the actual overlaid name. We usually recommend keeping them the same, so in this example I shall push that camera overlay, and that's complete. And these are the mainstream settings, encoding settings, and these are the substream settings. Now I'll just go over a few default behaviors with Freedom when you do add an IP camera. So by default, when you add the camera, it's automatically added to a 24/7 recording schedule that is continuous and motion detection. So it's a dual recording stream that is by default when you add it. And we can check that if you like by going to record setup. And you can see our camera here. It is ticked. And if we see our camera on this list over here, it's usually at the bottom here. If we scroll down, and there it is there. And it's on schedule 1. And schedule 1, as you see here, the light blue, that is a motion, a normal and a motion recording schedule, and it's 24/7 as you see. You can actually click on that if you wanted to put it on a different recording schedule. Do you really ever need to do that? So I'll leave it on 1. And by default it will use all recording disks. As you see here, all disks, that is the default behavior. You do have the option to record a specific camera to a specific hard drive only if you wish. So after we've added our camera, there are a few things we should check. So let's open our camera that we added. There it is there. And the first thing we need to check is the date and time is correct for our region, which in my case it is. It's up here. And if the date and time was incorrect, I would go into setup and I would click this button here. Now normally this option here is ticked, and I would press this button here and that will actually time sync all devices on this server, with the exception of any OnViv IP cameras, which must use NTP for their time synchronization. And we also, after a few minutes at least, you should actually check that it is recording. You should leave it run for a bit before you actually do this. But let's go into playback and have a look. So there's my new camera. And as you see, there's not much recording. I'm just zooming in the timeline, but there is no gaps or black gaps, which is means a network issue possibly when you see that. So that's recording okay at the moment. Now after we've added the camera, there's a few things we need to do in the Freedom server, and that's probably add the camera to an existing camera group, because it was a good idea, and also check the user permissions. So we'll start with the user permissions. So I'm going to go into setup, click on setup, and under user management. Now I'll just explain the default behavior with permissions. So let's try see this account here. So down here we've got the all ticked under live video rights, and also under playback rights, for example. Now by default, when you add a camera and the user has this all ticked, the camera will be automatically added their existing subset of permissions, which in this case you see it's ticked, so it's ticked automatically. If this wasn't ticked, and I'll just show you an example of one that hasn't got all camera rights. You see here the all is unticked. So the gaming, for example, now you see this all isn't ticked. So in this case, if I wanted to give this user access to this new camera, I would have to tick this option here, and of course the video type, permissions type is live video. And if I wanted to give them playback rights, of course I'd have to make sure that's ticked as well, and whatever rights, like they don't have footage, if I didn't want to give them footage rights, I'd leave that unticked. So again, if the all isn't ticked, you have to manually tick the permissions you want for that particular user. Okay, now we'll go into groups. So I'm going to click on group setup, and you've got a few groups here. So let's go to this group. Now it obviously choose the group that I wanted the camera to be in. And so let's say I wanted it in this group, which is all camera groups. I would highlight the camera and actually click on this right arrow, and that will actually put it down the bottom. So you see here, if I wanted to order that, obviously I would, you can click on the up, that brings it up. You might want to put it in a different location within the group. So let's say I'm happy with that there. I would then apply, Now, one thing after adding cameras to groups, it's very important that you consider, this is on clients as well, this is obviously a server, but if I now open that group, is be careful you monitor the CPU usage, and we don't recommend it exceeds 70%. It will fluctuate a bit like you see here, so this around the 50 to 60%, so this is near the maximum, and not all cameras are being displayed, by the way. It's very important you monitor that the PC that you're decoding live on can actually support that number of HD cameras in a camera group. If it doesn't, you have an option, of course, to change the default to substream, and the way you do that is under device setup, and I select the camera, and under the default live view video I select substream. That's if I had CPU limitations at the site. Now, another thing you may wish to do, if there is EMAPs implemented on the site, not all sites have EMAPs, but if there are, you obviously have to add, modify the EMAPs and add the camera hyperlink to the EMAP. So I'm going to assume, I'll just show you an example. I haven't actually got an EMAP on this one, but I'll quickly create one. So over here, let's say 36 was our new camera, for argument's sake. I'll just resize this. So under this add camera, we see our new camera listed here. We simply drag it over to the C36, assuming this was the new camera on the EMAP. And in this case, because it's got the red numbers, I want to select the middle transparent icon and position it over the center of that camera. I'll save it now, and although I haven't got an additional monitor on this server, I'll just open the EMAPs, which will open on the top of this. And if I close all video to test my EMAP hyperlink works, and I'm going to drag it there so that hyperlink works. So that's about it for adding a camera. It's as simple as that. Now, one final thing before you've changed all your settings on the Freedom server, what you should always do, of course, is back up the configuration, and you can do that by clicking on the hamburger menu here and selecting backup system parameters. And I would actually suggest you put the site name and the date of the backup, and I'd highly recommend you copy this backup off-site, so copy it to a USB stick, and you can also, of course, copy it to the local recorder. This is for a safekeeping. You back up the config after you've made modifications to the server. And that wraps up this video. Thanks for watching.